So I made a video recently about the struggles that someone who's been actively playing Genshin at AR60 for a long time is going through, and a lot of people had been asking, both constructively and non-constructively, if there were features that I particularly wanted to see being added to the game. Though I did touch upon this subject maybe sort of briefly in that video, this time I'm going to dedicate this whole video fully to the things that I personally want to see in the game. That being said, these are just a list of things that I think would be neat to see in the game, and I will not try to really complain about any of the existing features since I've done that quite a lot in the previous video. But I won't make any promises though. So if anyone else has differing priorities and what they want to see in the game, then that's just how it is. With that out of the way, the name's Leafy, and welcome to Let's Talk Slow About Games, Genshin Edition. For the most part, I can separate this video into two different sections. The first part that I'll be talking about will focus on actual quality of life and content features that can add to the game in terms of actual things to do and actual improvement suggestions to certain systems. The latter half of this video will focus more on miscellaneous features that I personally think can add a bit more depth and fun to little tidbits in the game. It won't necessarily improve everyone's experience the way it traditionally would with additional content, but I believe that it certainly wouldn't hurt to have these sort of features in the game. Now, let's start with the first feature that I'd love to see in the game, namely, weekly rewards. Apart from the dailies that we all know and maybe hate, maybe love, a lot of other gacha games have a weekly reward system that they put in place to reward those players who are able to complete basically extended versions of the daily assignments. Collect a certain amount of points throughout the week and you'll be able to achieve milestones that rewards you proportionally to the reward milestone that you reach. Generally, this means that the further you get on your weekly completion bar, then the more and better rewards that you can stand to gain through the system. Some prominent examples are from games like Tower of Fantasy, which rewards you upgrade materials, player XP, and premium currency through completing various game objectives. Or like Star Rail, which creatively implemented their weekly reward system in their simulated universe subsection. As it stands, Genshin only has a weekly system that revolves around collecting BP points, and these things give you, well, nothing but BP points. With no rewards of substance acquired when you actually collect or max out your points by the end of each playing week. Sure, they have the parametric transformer, but who in the world of Donkeyland cares about that thing? Okay, no, I'm half kidding. If you still do this thing on a weekly basis, then good for you, honestly. But it really lacks rewards for something you can only do once a week. Anyways, I'm of the thought that having something to gun for the duration of the week would definitely help players have more of a target for what they want to do in the game. That, and of course, having more rewards that incentivizes players to actually farm or do a certain amount of work would make putting a little bit of extra effort be all the more worth it. Segueing from this suggestion, honestly, I brought up Star Rail's simulated universe because that's the next thing that would seem like a great addition to Genshin's endgame repertoire. The fact of the matter is, Genshin already has all the ingredients necessary to implement something like a simulated universe within itself. Blessings are pretty much a thing since the birth of the Abyss, and we have all the character playstyles we need to customize what sort of buffs we would want to have for specific runs. We can have blessings that revolves around HP consumption attacks, having shields, or plunge attackers. There are a myriad amount of options that would be available to us. Whether they want to set the quote-unquote blessing paths based on the elements or those playstyles will be up to the devs, honestly. And maybe the rewards itself can revolve around putting one of those self-modeling resins in Genshin, just in much of a more common capacity than the ones Star Rail have, since Genshin has had a lot more types of artifacts to be farmed than Star Rail has. They can implement the extra weekly rewards alongside that, and it can also help to provide players with extra objectives that prolongs the content's rewardability, so that it doesn't become a one and off patch and can be added into later on. Not to mention, more subsections means more achievements, and more achievements means that little bit extra reward, especially for people who are achievement hunters. Albeit, it may be rather minuscule and of heavy quantity, but at least it's there, you know? Speaking of achievements, the next feature that I'm about to discuss has some huge correlation to the management of achievement collections and reward collection in general. A simple yet rather huge quality of life feature that I really thought Genshin would have had from a long while ago is to add a goddamn claim all button. Added to where, you might ask? Freaking everywhere, bro. These are the types of moments where I genuinely have to stare at Hoyoverse and just ask, like, how do you have the initiative to add the feature to certain parts of the game, but then not have the brain power to think that little bit ahead and just decide to apply it to every part of the game that would probably benefit from having such a feature from being available within its premises? It's like planning a delicious chicken roast and then you only end up seasoning a quarter of the chicken. Like, what kind of donkey logic is that? I had a huge wave of relief when I saw that they were gonna finally add some claim all buttons, and I finally thought that they at least got something going in terms of basic quality of life improvements. But when I logged in and tried to check if they actually implemented everywhere, lo and behold, the disappointment that I had when I saw that it was only available for expeditions and finished foraging item screens. In my head, I was more than ready to have begun seeing these things pop up in event collection pages, Teapot crafting screens, and most importantly, the achievement page itself. For someone who doesn't exactly achievement hunt, having to scroll through every single bit of newly achieved achievements just to collect them makes me move away from even wanting to collect them in the first place. The problem itself lies in the fact that there are normally so many things to collect in the first place. Besides, in regards to the crafting screens, it may not seem like much, but having to constantly spam claim item escape and claim item escape, claim item escape every single time you want to collect something becomes such a brain-deadening experience when you've done it for literal hundreds to thousands of times. Like, come on, Hoyo, more claim all buttons, please. Like, that's all I'm asking for. Another feature that I think most people would have a sense of appreciation for is an artifact substats reroller. And look, I get it. Why not just have the ability to reroll main stats as well? But if we were to actually implement a system in Genshin that provides us with ways to get a self-modeling resin type of item, then I think it would be a bit of an overkill to also have a main stat reroller. But, you know, that's just my opinion. And I'll make this fair to the devs as well. The reroll system that I'll be suggesting will revolve around actually using the substats of other artifacts instead of us having to only collect new materials or limited currencies just to reroll. Or actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it as I'm writing this script, maybe that new weekly simulated universe content that we're thinking about earlier in the video can revolve around having the materials required for these rerolls as a reward. This way, the new piece of content has more of a purpose and therefore can also become a much more permanent feature of the game. Back to what I'm saying about the rerolling though, we can use other artifact substats to facilitate which substat it is that we want to bake into the target artifact. Put it this way, you have a great crit substat somewhere in a support set, which I'm sure is an issue that all of us have experienced since the dawn of time, and you want to put it into a DPS artifact. I'll use this graphic as an example. We have 4 different artifacts that have a crit damage substat in them, and you want to use them as fuel for this one artifact that have an almost complete DPS substat pool, but lacking that one crit damage substat. Each crit damage substat availability on each fuel artifact will add its conversion chance by 25%. So having 4 of them will just allow you to straight up choose that substat to bake into the target artifact. And then you just need to choose which of the target artifact's substats you want to replace them with, and pay the cost with the new weekly materials, whatever that may be. This is a system that is inspired by a game called Trove's very own artifact rerolling system. But the amount of materials you need both to reroll and upgrade stats there are quite expensive if you don't hard daily drive the game. So the reason I emphasize the whole don't make the materials too premium or expensive part is to really avoid that problem. Though of course, if we want to be fair to Hoyo again, then they can make it so that these reroll materials drop rather minimally, I guess, in the new weekly content that we suggested. Because, come on, let's be honest here, if Hoyo were to ever implement this sort of feature, then they'd probably RNG the drop rates of these materials as well. Now, on to the next half of this video, which will be the miscellaneous section, which are just ideas that might add a little bit more depth to specific sections of the game that doesn't really involve gameplay. One such feature is adding the unique character voice lines that they've put into Star Rail that activates once certain characters are put in the team with other specific characters. Actually, before Star Rail implemented that cool little feature, I'd wanted to make a video asking for that sort of thing because I've long played Pokemon's version of a gacha game called Pokemon Masters, and that game had that exact feature where if you put a certain trainer with other trainers that they have some sort of a relationship with, then they will say differing voice lines from their default team entry voice lines.
Ed, stop thinking so hard and just enjoy the battle!
This should be lively with you around, Hilda.
I'm counting on your expertise, Sonia. Lead the way.
Do you need me to give you directions, Leon?
Again, I'm not sure why Genshin hasn't gotten this feature, but it would be cool to see funny character interactions like Kale not wanting Sinon to make any more jokes, or Diluc getting annoyed at Jane calling him Sir again. But relenting anyways. It would be even cooler if they can make it so that the characters actually reply to each other, which would elevate this feature even further than what has already existed out there. But at this point, I think that would very much be wishful thinking. Although, if we were to be honest, then a whole lot of this video is just a lot of wishful thinking. Either way, seeing it implemented will be such a nice little feature that my character interaction loving self will very much enjoy. Speaking of team comps though, this next feature idea will heavily revolve around the same concept that elemental resonances have. Only this time, it would be geared more towards character traits and the resonance that they would have in relation to how they are in the lore. This is another feature that is inspired from Pokemon Masters. Yes, I'm not that creative of a person. I'm just good at stealing. Or in this case, I'm just good at getting inspired. Shut your mouth. Back to the feature in hand. I think these resonances will be a good and rather inexpensive way of getting smaller boosts to your character stats. It won't be any game-altering buffs that those resonances will be giving, but I think that it can serve to be a neat little feature that might help people get that little bit more of damage or utility out of. In Pokemon Masters, these resonances are based around character traits and archetypes such as which region they come from, what their character type and class is, and it even extends to things such as whether or not they wear a scarf. And the buffs that they get revolves around adding minute stat additions like additional attack, max HP, and so on. Maybe in Genshin's case, we can have those archetypes be like Archons, region of origins, government leaders, rich people, or even just straight up low IQ individuals. I don't know, anything goes at this point. While the stat boost that you can gain itself can also be things like small increases to max HP, attack, and maybe elemental mastery, among others at least. And last but not least, a feature that I want them to actually come back to is for them to actually add more music that we can buy from Chubby in the Teapot. Like really, you can only find music up to early Inazuma in his shop, and I'm sure that for those who actually care that little bit for their Teapot, then they would love to be able to play those other background musics in their homely worlds. That's about it for the features that I want to put forward in this video. Honestly, I had a difficult time starting the script for the video because I thought I wasn't able to think of what to put, but turns out it was just because I'm an idiot and I decided to start writing the script at like midnight and my brain just wasn't working. The moment I got a decent boost during daytime, the video thankfully turned into something that I can really be happy with. It ended up being much longer that it probably exceeded the actual gameplay video that I was gonna put in the background, so apologies if you end up watching some pretty outdated gameplay. Now before we go, I just want to say a massive thank you for 500, I guess 600 subscribers now. It's surreal to think that just a couple of weeks ago, I was just sitting there with 36 subs and now I'm already this high up. It means so much to me that there are people who are actually watching my content, and all the interactions and comments that I've had with all of you in the section down below have been nothing short of a pleasure to have. Hopefully I can keep up the quality of my content, and maybe I can also diversify it a bit, because as much as I love talking about Star Rail and Genshin, I do aim to have this channel veer towards more of the variety nature rather than just those two games. This Let's Talk Slow series will aim mostly towards that as well. I'm gonna be talking about other games that I might have a bit of interest in for that week, and just talk slowly about it. Though worry not, those two games will always be my priority in terms of content and research, and I will always strive to make quality content regardless of what the video is about. With all that said, thank you for watching the video. Hopefully this can add to the discussion of what ideas we can bring forth so that we can turn the game that we love become something that we can love even further. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it, and dislike it if you don't, and share your own thoughts and ideas in the comments down below. I look forward to what you guys have in store. Now, the name's Leafy, and I'll see you guys next time. Sayonara.